Welcome to the Family Collective, conversations that inspire change for families, improve family-driven care, and elevate the family voice. This podcast is hosted and brought to you by the National Family Support Technical Assistance Center that is led by the National Federation of Families. Hear from the family members and change makers working to strengthen family support, the National Federation of Families, or one of their many nationally recognized partners. Welcome to this episode where we will discuss communities, families, and interrupting violence. Today, we are going to start with our podcast with Lee Davis, and he does a lot of violence prevention in different neighborhoods, specifically in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Allegheny County. There's a ton of things that I could say about Lee Davis, but I'm going to let Lee introduce himself to the audience. Lee?
Hey, peace and blessings, everybody. Lee Davis, Pittsburgh, PA, born and raised in a little town outside of Pittsburgh called Braddock, Pennsylvania, home of the first steel mill, home of the first icons of industry, Carnegie on down the line. Project kid, made it out the projects, doing well now. Been able to mentor, help employ those that traditionally have had problems getting employed. So mentoring some of the folks that folks don't want to mentor or want to be around. I took on that mantle years ago and never let it go. So that's a little bit about me. I'm just a rebel, a change maker, all those things that people want to check the boxes on. I take pride in saying it out loud.
Okay, a rebel and change maker. That's what we like now, especially with the violence that is going on in our communities and the need of mentorship for young people in throughout the nation. I know that you have established and started some school-based mentoring programs. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came about and how well it's going?
Well, it started probably like close to 20 years ago. When I was running around in the streets, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, some elders came to me and told me, how influential I could be in changing the lives of some of the youngins that was running around that had similar backgrounds and circumstances that I came from. And so I pivoted into, what is now called violence prevention or mentoring. Back then, there was no term for it. If you was in the Black community, it was just called looking out. So,
Right.
we took that concept and at the time, gang violence was heavy in Pittsburgh. You had a lot of cliques and crews running around. And so I just took what I learned from my elders and I added entrepreneurship. I added the fashion part of it. I added being fly to the game. You know what I mean? There was nobody out here in Pittsburgh being fly talking about helping kids. Most of the dudes that was doing that was wearing backpacks, looking grungy, and was considered to be woke before woke became a name or a term. And so that wasn't my lifestyle, you know what I mean? So I took what I knew in the music game, the lifestyle and the culture of hip hop, and I infused it, and so the guys and the young ladies took to that. And so I was able to go into the schools and create programs based on what I was hearing from the kids. At that time, a lot of the adults were just telling kids what they wanted to do or what they was going to do or how they needed to do it. And I reversed that. I listened to the kids, I listened to the community, and I started off in one community, similar to what I'm doing now, but started off in one, and then it just flourished into 9, schools and communities. And I took that same concept and kind of used it to today. Of course, within that time frame leading up to now, I got to mentor, know, and learn from some great people along the way. I made sure that I was in spaces that I was going to learn from people that knew more than me, whether it was
How let me ask you this. How did you get into those spaces? Like how did you get your foot into the door to even do the first mentoring program?
Well, the one thing about Pittsburgh and America in general is that when times get bad, they're going to go to, I don't want to say any and everybody, but they're gonna go to the person that they hear has the most influence, and they're gonna bring them into the fold. And that's
Mhm.
what was, my name was ringing bells throughout the city at that time. And so people were saying, "Hey, we need this Lee Davis guy. We keep hearing about him. The kids are talking about him." Because before I even got into schools or in any institution, I was doing stuff out of my pocket just on the love in the hood. I
Mhm.
get a space, rent it out, or be right there on the block with the little guys and the young ladies just dropping knowledge on them and telling them
Okay.
what resources were before this was even a job or anything. I just got blessed to create my own situation to whereas, uh, the powers that be came to find me and put me in one space. And once I blew that space up, and for those that don't understand that, when I blew it up, I mean I did the greatest job that you could imagine in that space
Okay.
with no resources. And then once I got that going, that led into the University of Pittsburgh. Rest in peace. Uh, it was Dr. Hidi Yamatami and Dean Davis. Rest in peace, brother. Man, mentor Dean Davis, School of Social Work at Pitt. They kept hearing about me, and the next thing you know, they wanted to do a study. They wanted to follow me around to see how I was operating, how I was changing these kids' lives and getting the resources and all that stuff. So they followed me around for almost 5 years,
Wow.
documented the whole thing. And next thing
Okay.
you know, went into the medical journals and all this stuff because it was a new phenomenon as far as violence prevention and interruption and all that stuff. Those terms are new now.
Mhm.
Back then, nobody had heard of it. People was wondering, really what is that?
Right.
And so that's really how, I really got in the door.
So where would you say that your passion comes from? Like where did that come from that you just felt the need to
Well,
help individuals on the street and resolve issues?
well, again, I was a project kid, right? So growing up in the projects, I saw a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, a lot of hunger. And so I knew deep down that I didn't want anybody to feel that. Like I felt it too. My
Mhm.
grandmother was raising me. My mom, had a job and she was working all the time. My dad was in and out, until he got himself together, which was years later. But I just wandered the projects, man, and wandered Braddock. And my grandma introduced me because she was a social butterfly. My grandma,
Okay.
everybody. So we would walk the avenue. I'm a little kid walking with her. She would introduce me to everybody.
Okay.
We would go, back then grandma took you into the bar with her, so I knew the bar owners from up and down the avenue. But she showed me how to be social. Even
Mhm.
at that time I was really quiet though. I was a little guy. I didn't grow and get bigger until later on. But for the longest time, I was a little guy. Now, if
Okay.
anybody knows me now, I'm 6'2", 225, and I grew into that frame, later on in life. But for a long time, I was just a little guy and just was observant of everything and everybody, how people moved, how they talked to each other, how they resolved issues. And so I always had that in me. But later on in life, tragedy struck and took my younger brother. He died to gun violence, and that whole time I never knew really what I was going to do with the information I was taking in and the feelings that I was
Mhm.
having about what I was seeing and the people that was struggling. I was always trying to figure out how could I help those people
Right.
because they were my people, And so
Yeah.
when my brother died, I really knew what it was. It was like this is my calling, the violence
Okay.
prevention part of this. This is because it just struck me in a different way. Because early on, I thought I was just going to be a break dancer.
Right.
Because hip hop was heavy back in the day. I didn't know what I was going to do in that realm. I just knew I loved hip hop and the culture. So I
Yeah.
was a break dancer. That was going to be my life. I was going to retire from that. But
Um,
at 12 and 13, that's what you think. Then you get older, like, oh, man, I don't think this is going to be a
right. That's
job.
not gonna cut it. Right.
Right.
Well,
So,
I am absolutely sorry to hear about your brother, but like you said, it did stem a desire in you to know really what your purpose was. And I could tell just from the things that you're doing in the community that you have done and that you are doing that you're very passionate about it. One thing that we talk a lot about here at the National Federations of Families is lived experience. And we really support families who have walked through the same types of experiences for mental health or substance use. So I see that lived experience gives people a different understanding of how they relate to you. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with that. And I believe that's why so many kids and families and any community I go into, without the reputation that I have, when they meet me, they feel like, hey, I've known this brother for a long time. He's like an uncle, a brother, you know what I mean, a cousin, even a
Mhm.
father figure at times. And that's because of the empathy, you know what I mean? And I come from that and I understand the pain and the struggles, and I don't judge anybody and I don't presume that you come from that until you tell me, but some
Mhm.
things are you can observe, some things you can feel, and when folks talk to you, you can feel that energy and they know when you're being real and honest with them, and
Yep.
they can feel too when you've been through that pain and you felt that struggle along with them, and
Mhm.
regardless of my stature or social status or whatever's going on, I'm a man of the people. I don't care what's going on. I'm still gonna walk the projects, different neighborhoods, and I'm gonna shake
Mhm.
hands, I'm gonna kiss babies, but with a purpose. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I ain't no
Yeah, with
politician.
purpose,
Yeah,
right?
my thing is with purpose. I'm letting you know
Yes.
I'm here to serve you. You know what I mean? And the universe is undefeated. Whatever you put out there, you're gonna get back.
I agree. I agree. So do you do monthly meetings with the community? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, again, I started my career in the city.
Mhm.
Um, and from building that reputation up and doing good works in the city, um, I noticed that there was a lot going on in my old community, in my old area, the Mon Valley, which is considered the county. So through a course of events, um, I brought a program out there, starting in the area called Wilkinsburg. Cure Violence was the first place that we started that in the county. We was the first to bring it to Allegheny County. Um, but even I'll take it back to your question. I went back home, saw what the issues were, met with the community, talked to the youth, met with the schools, um, and I had a couple partners that understood my vision and mission. And so it started with three of us, and it was the Greater Valley Coalition against gun violence. And so with three of us, we have now grown to 300 members. That's 300 people and organizations that are part of this coalition now,
Okay.
serving really six communities. But we've now took the coalition to Penn Hills. We trained them. Now they have a coalition, and that serves East Hills, Penn Hills, and Homewood. We took it out to Stowe Rocks, all the areas that had high rates of violence. And so,
Okay.
and we're going to be in Aliquippa training them so they can have a coalition out in Beaver County.
Nice.
But out of that coalition, we talked about, what models are out there, what violence prevention models are out there versus me just coming in with my own ideas and the stuff I did in the city, which I was heavily contracted to do. So I
Mhm.
was like, well, let me research with my partners, see what models, the best models are out there anyway. And so we fell on Cure Violence. Now, luckily, when I started in this work, some of the guys that are running Cure Violence started with me. So I
Mhm.
knew them, you know what I mean? It was just kind of we coming back together again like the super friends. Because I had traveled extensively when I first started this mission of violence prevention. So I was in different cities learning and training and lending my expertise. And so it was an easy transition for us when it came to cure violence. And I had already met Dr. Sluckin years ago when I was a young man starting this work. So I knew what the model was. It started out as ceasefire, and then they changed it to cure violence. So and then we just wrote up the grant. Pennsylvania had put out violence prevention money. I think it was 50 million. And we said, we're going to take a chance on it. We're going to get the money for this grant. I mean, get the money
Mhm.
for this model. And, by the grace of God, we got it. Um, our coalition is 7 years strong now. And I'm happy to say I've never missed a meeting in 7 years, which I
Oh,
didn't
wow.
know.
Okay.
My staff and people told me about that. I didn't even know that until the last
Yeah.
meeting. So 7 years, we've been consistent. We've helped a lot of families. And in that coalition, it's resource providers, stakeholders, community members,
Okay.
hospital-based intervention, universities. So we're all at the table as one. And the big thing is sharing information and resources.
Okay. And tell me this, how involved are the parents in the community?
Well, of course, across the country, not just Pittsburgh in
Yeah.
general, the parent thing has always been an issue, getting them
Right.
involved outside of youth sports or something like that. But we were able to. My hook was, I know I'm not going to get all the moms, dads, parents, grandparents. What I'll start with is the moms who lost loved ones to gun violence.
Mm.
Once I got them on the hook, everybody else fell into play. Everybody saw
Okay.
it safe to come in, and so we started. They really reached out and got the parents that we wanted to get at the table, and so now again, everybody knows it's an open forum. We have an agenda all the time. You can send me agenda items, and we'll put them on there. Um, we tapped in with, because for a long time, coming out of COVID, even before COVID, there was always issue with the police in the community.
Hmm.
We helped create a regional police department, got rid of some of the smaller departments that weren't working. So the regional police department is now in place, serving three of the six communities that we work in heavily. And so the training has been way better. They're more efficient. They know the people in the community now, and they can come to our meetings. They can share with us, and also on top of that, we've been working together along with Western Psych and Dr. Perez to get some of the psychologists and the therapists to come on board with not just the police, but my violence interrupters on the ground, so that we can pinpoint and work on those that are just going through, mental health episodes, or just going through something personally in their life and ain't a criminal activity, so that we
Right.
don't see some of the things that happened to some folks that was killed by the police, or
Right.
didn't understand what was going on and something bad happened to the person. So
Right.
we were creative and innovative, and coming together with Western Psych along with our interrupters and our police folks. So we're working on that program now, so that if we get a call or the police now send us information about domestics and other things, we can have
Hmm.
somebody on the ground go in first and kind of assess the situation based on their knowledge and expertise, and let us know whether the interrupters should go in first and figure it out, or the police need to be called. But we don't
Oh, wow.
have
That's
yeah, we don't want to have another incident where somebody loses their life based on just having an episodic episode, mental health episode or something like that,
right.
or just need something as simple as a hug. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we trying to be innovative and creative in our approach.
Okay. Now I'm gonna try to jog your memory about going back to when you were able to get the first mothers who had experienced gun violence to come to the meeting. What was that process like? Was it difficult to get, like, did you have to get one mom and then everybody else kind of came? What was that process like, if you could recall?
Yeah, well, again, based on folks knowing me and the work that I was doing, they knew I was genuine, and
Yeah.
I laid out the vision and the purpose of not just the meeting, but where I wanted to go down the road,
Hmm.
as far as the healing of the community. And
Yeah.
so, we got one, two, I think three moms, and then it just kind of took off from there. Uh,
Okay.
but it took some. It didn't take a lot of convincing, but it took some convincing for them to understand their role in healing the community, and how they could play a part.
Yes.
So
And I
once
think
they
that
understood that, it was on.
Right. I think that what is important in what you're saying is a lot of times individuals get grants, right? But they're not connected to the community.
Right.
That people don't know them, people don't trust them. And a lot of times, people come with new ideas and they try to they don't go back to what's already working in the community, try to start something new, right? So I think that's good information for people who listen to say, you know what, when you get the grants, figure out who's doing what on the ground, think about who is reputable in your community, talk to the community, talk to
Mhm.
the people, talk to the parents, and then put a plan together. So I heard all of that in your description of developing these thriving community meetings and your intervention.
Right. You're absolutely right. Because folks see the finished product and think it's that easy.
Right.
The sleepless nights, the early mornings, the meeting after meeting after meeting, and
Mhm.
then even with all that being said, you yourself have to be resilient. You yourself have to understand that um, the seeds that you plant today might not grow for a long time, you know, and you're
Yeah.
gonna have some naysayers. You're gonna have some, "Why are you doing this? Nothing ever works. Somebody did that already. It didn't happen." So you gotta kind of bypass all of that. You have to be,
Yeah.
again, resilient and you have to have the passion to keep moving forward, even in the wake of disasters, wake of again the naysayers, and you got to deal with the personal things that you in your life.
Right.
Life's on you sometimes. Life comes,
Absolutely.
so you have to deal with all of that, man. But
Yeah.
um, you got to have the wherewithal to understand and to know, and um, you have to have the discernment too of
Hmm.
when to move left and when to move right, and whether to talk to this person or leave that person alone. And if you need to know, because some of us as African Americans, Black folks in particular, have gotten away from our feelings and our emotions, our sixth sense, our gut feeling.
Right.
I never left that. I never lost that. That's why I'm still here today. Because if I
Okay.
didn't have that, all that stuff I did in the streets prior, I wouldn't be here. You
Okay.
know,
Okay.
and so I try to get people to kind of say, "Hey, listen to that gut feeling, man. If it's saying something to you, listen to it. Don't push it to the side." But yeah, we've come a long way. Uh,
Hmm.
Again, we've been able to, help others get their plan together and put it into practice. But to your point, it's very, very important in when you're putting these plans together to have your chart up of who can play what role. Don't wait till you get the grant, because some people, like I know, there's a lot of good grant writers out here and
Right.
organizing and how to write stuff that look well and speak well. But when it comes to putting the work in and hiring the right people, if you're not in this lane, you're gonna fail miserably. And that means you're gonna drop the ball on helping these families who are gonna be relying on you. And
Right.
so we made a point. It was like the NFL draft with us. When we had these positions, we had our top 5 and 6 in each position, and who's number one. You know, who's
Yeah.
reputable, who's a credible
Yes.
messenger, who has the connection to the resources for real, the resources that when we call, not only they're gonna pick up, but they do what they say they're gonna do. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? And so our vetting process was strenuous, and it took a while, but we got the right people in place. For as far as when we started doing our true violence model and our acts model, when we got that off the ground, we went with a
Hmm.
strong team. And of course, you're gonna have bumps in the road because some people are
Absolutely.
more knowledgeable and skilled than others, and so
Right.
bring a team together. I always use if you see my chair, you know, I'm I'm an Avengers fan. They don't all get together, but they know what the mission is. They
Right.
don't all like each other, but they know what the mission is. So
And I think that I'm gonna jump in here and say that's important because we are funded by SAMHSA. We do a lot of SAMHSA grants, and we do a lot of technical assistance for people who are starting out, project directors and things like that. And what you're saying is the strategy behind it has to be, you have to, have the right people in place. And sometimes the person who's writing something great doesn't understand what's happening on the ground, right?
and right.
So yeah, been there,
And it's
been
not
there, managed that.
and I already know. So
Yeah.
anybody that's been in a management position or ownership position, a big thing now, and I've always lived by this, and that's why I would credit this to me having a lot of success in business as an entrepreneur and in music and entertainment business, and now over here in this violence prevention space, which I've been
Hmm.
doing for just as long as I've done the other things. But people got to understand, it's not always about somebody having a degree. It's more
Yeah.
about the culture of your organization. Do they fit
Yeah.
into the culture that you set, the standard that you've set? Because I've seen people with multiple degrees, doctorates, masters come into an organization and tear it apart because they just
Right.
didn't fit, or what they thought how things should go. It didn't match up, and it messed up the chemistry of the culture of the organization. So I
Hmm.
say, if you come in, whatever position you're trying to hire for, get to know that person. Because I got people around me that are master's degree level to just straight street guys and street females, whether they was working on the pole one day or hustling in the corner. I've been able to get them out of those positions and train them up to be leaders.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And use those influences in the right way, along with
Hmm.
working right next to the person that graduated from Carnegie Mellon or Howard University.
Now that right there could definitely lead me into things that we're fighting for nationally for family peer specialists who may not have, some of them are degreed, some of them are not degreed, but they have that lived experience. They've
Right.
worked those systems. They understood the challenges that your children or that they had as parents with children with whether it's mental health or substance use needs. And society always doesn't want to pay them what they're worth. They're like, oh, well,
Right.
they don't have a degree. And there are a lot of people on the floor advocating to get, fair pay for their level of experience is just as great as the person who wrote the grant. And they're
Right.
actually doing the work. So, yeah, people who are passionate for it, people who understand it, you have to have a whole triage of people to get work
Right.
done for us human beings, right?
Right. And again, if the mission is the mission and the purpose is the purpose,
Yep.
if somebody has a problem with somebody getting paid a certain amount, that's the ego thing. That's a personal pride thing because
All
I
right.
have people as an entrepreneur, I got people that are in my company that make more than I make. So
Hmm.
my model is different. So for example, for my consulting company, if if we get $100,000 contract, say you bring in $100,000 contract, right? Anybody that brings that in, they all split it up. I only get 10% of that. But if you bring
Hmm.
it in, you're gonna get at least 50% of that, maybe even 80, depending on what the contract is and the stipulations and all that. So everybody has that opportunity to grow, feed their family, and be great. And I only get pieces of each contract, but it averages out to being the same what everybody else is getting. So
Right, right.
some people, we grew up in the model of, no, I'm the boss, I'm gonna get 90, you're gonna get 10, and I'm
Yeah.
just keep working you to death and give you 3 and 4 different jobs you gotta do for that 10%. I'm the
Hmm.
total opposite. And that's the model that I try to teach other entrepreneurs in certain spaces. Now, is that
Hmm.
for everybody? No, that's why we gotta do an evaluation, look at what you're into. But we evaluate everything, whether it's
Right.
entrepreneurship, business ownership, or violence prevention. The evaluation piece is heavy.
So, so let me ask you this. I'm shifting gears a little bit. Are there any current policies that you think need to be changed, whether it's in Pennsylvania, whether it's nationally, in terms of the work that you do, in terms of violence,
Okay,
like gun violence and things like that?
working with ceasefire and other organizations, these everybody talk about gun laws and all that stuff. I'm not against ownership of guns. If you want to own a
Right.
gun, that's your God-given right. That's the right of the country. You can do that.
Yes.
But there's certain things that you know when somebody's gun gets stolen, that being reported, that should be a law. That should be a policy. You know what I mean? Because the gun
Hmm.
is finding a way to the black community. So
Right.
if you're not reporting that, come on now, we can really track down some things and stop a lot of things that happen on a major level. When we start with something that people think is so small as reporting your gun stolen. So
Okay.
that's just one of probably a list of things, and I'll just want to use that so that because that's the easier thing to understand, and that's what
Hmm.
happens daily that we see. When comes to and we pushed on this and we fought for the law that banned those switches and the law that's banning now. I know in Pennsylvania, I think each state may be different, but the law for ghost guns, ordering the parts through the mail and then assembling the gun and with no serial number or nothing on it, you can go kill anybody with that thing and have no
Right.
no way of tracing it. So the law was passed. Now we got to really push on it being implemented. So
Okay.
those are the things that we've been working on and that our coalition has been a part of, versus just talking about put the gun down. We want to deal with the social determinants of health. We want to deal with adverse childhood experiences. We want all that plays a part in us healing our communities.
Right. Right. Wow, that's yeah. I mean, think that is so huge to think of all of the components to heal our communities,
Mm.
right? Um, hmm. Okay. Okay. So you're gonna have to cut this part off because I'm stumped. um, can you think of anything that families and communities nationally can do to help improve and support violence in their communities? Because you
I would
said a lot
say,
about what a lot of people are doing and initiatives and having people. I really love the idea of people coming out to assess the situation before the police. But what do you think families and communities can step up and do more to help?
Well, let me say this. One of the things that we live by is we don't work with the child or children or youth in isolation of the family or community. So
Hmm.
put that out there, and you can reverse that to say it the other way with families and children and community. However you want to say it, we don't isolate any of those three components. So let me start off by saying that. Now, I believe we need to elevate and center the voices and experiences of people most impacted. I don't think that happens enough. Uh,
Hmm.
Address root causes and social determinants of health, as I said before. We need to be on top of that. Um, all the way to ensuring fairness and reducing racial and ethnic disparities as far as when we're doing this work. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that people may go over some people's heads, but I want y'all to Google what I just said so y'all understand exactly what I'm talking about. Um, we need to strengthen the folks that are doing this work. We need to support them more, make sure that they're okay. All my staff, have a therapist, because we out here
Hmm.
in the trenches. People are out here
Yeah.
at war, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if the soldiers is coming back and the first thing they got to go through is therapy or get talked to about their feelings and emotions,
They
my
need to
folks,
debrief.
yep, you got to be debriefed. So the same thing. We do it on a daily basis, but on a professional level, they all have, therapists that they work with.
That's
Which
good.
keeps their mind as strong as their body.
Yep. And it could be secondary trauma.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, that's a
yeah.
good thing for sure. So as we're kind of coming to the end, I cannot mention the fact that you received the President's Volunteer Service Award. How did I know
Yeah.
you're doing a lot of stuff on every level, but how did you receive that from Barack Obama?
You know what? Some folks from different parts of the country kind of nominated me, which I didn't even know, because you do this work and I travel a lot. I go to different cities and speak and do workshops and sometimes I'm just on the ground supporting other brothers and sisters that's just doing the work,
Yeah.
showing up with me or my team or what have you. Um, and so yeah, they nominated me and I don't know how many was nominated, but yeah, president pulled my number and said, "Hey brother, we want you in the White House. We're gonna honor you for the work you've been doing." And all too often when you're doing work in your own city, you don't get recognized.
Right.
I,
Exactly. Yep.
I've been blessed to be the opposite. You know, um, I've gotten every award you could name, the key to the city of Pittsburgh. Um, you name it, they've given it to me, and rightfully so because I put the work in.
Mhm.
I'm not one of
Bravo.
those black folks that shy away from it and say, "No, I just want to be humble." No, I put the work in.
You
And
did it
these
right.
little kids and youth families, they need to know that they see it, they feel it. I have mentees, um, and for some of my businesses, I'm one of the only ones that give internships to some of the black youth that come out of colleges around here because we still dealing with the racial part of kids can't get an internship with these major companies or businesses for their major to graduate. So all the
Right.
colleges know me. They'll send them to me. So I have that part of it. But more importantly, I love the fact that from the time I started this 20 years ago to now, to see the little dudes that I had playing in the NFL, that's in movies. Some of the young ladies are fashion designers and running their own companies, all the way down to the young men and women who just have a 9 to 5, doing well, taking care of their families and giving back to the community. That's my
Right.
biggest win. That's my biggest flex right there, is to see that happen. And of course, along the way, the sad part of this is, and a lot of time you always see me smiling and laughing, that'll keep me from crying. That's my response from crying a lot, which I do sometimes from time to time when I think back on some of the losses I've had. But,
Hmm.
I've been to over 200 funerals in 20 years. Uh,
Yeah.
so make no mistake about it, man. I like to highlight the wins, but those losses are the ones that keep you going. That
Right.
those kids that you lost, those families that went through traumatic things, and I'm not just a program guy. Like there's things called programs and all that, but I'm with people for life, man. I still checking on families. Families come checking on me. You might have somebody popping on my office here in Braddock or downtown. Mr. Lee, or people still hit me today that's grown, like, hey, Mr. Lee, I need some more help now.
Yeah.
Somebody been with me since they were 12, 13, they grown now, but they know my door is always open, or they may just want a word of advice or encouragement. And I feed off their energy too. Hearing from them makes my day and brightens me up and keeps me going on the days that, quite frankly, I might not think I could do it that day. You
Right.
but God has been good, man. I cannot complain. He has allowed me to feed my family in so many different ways and live a life that, quite honestly, most Black men in Pittsburgh will never experience. Even though we
Hmm.
push and try to make sure that everybody live a certain lifestyle and live the way they
Right.
want to, because they deserve to as a human. I know that ain't always the case, so I don't take it
Hmm.
for granted.
Okay. And of course, we always close out with this question: what would you give your younger self? What advice would you give your younger self about what you've done in your career?
I would I would say to my younger self, your today is not your tomorrow. you
Hmm.
know, just because you're going through some things today and you're hungry today, that don't mean it's always going to be like that. And I see so many youngins that feel like, the earth is falling and the sky is falling and they don't have a chance. Man, just live for another day, man. Take your time, make good decisions, pick that phone up if you need some help, drop the pride, because your today ain't always going to be your tomorrow, and tomorrow is going to be brighter and a beautiful day.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you so much, Lee Davis. What a great inspiration. And the work that you're doing is phenomenal. We know that our communities become better when we get involved. Feet on the ground works. Thanks again for your knowledge.